sight. There I am, losing sight. I don't like that right there, but I can put a little more on that. Is it Friday? It's Friday! I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm welding this rear end in. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. It's Friday. And I'm welding this rear end in. What's going on is, I've got all this stuff I'm welding to the rear end and all the brackets I'm welding for the spring. I've got components or pieces that I'm welding to the frame for these heim joints. I've got a piece of round rod that I'm welding on the frame there. And all I want to tell you is, when you're welding frame rails or components of frame or whatever, when you're burning that in, you should always bevel your metal off. If you know what I'm saying, you should maybe take a 45 off your metal so your welder can get in there and penetrate, or always leave a little bit of a gap. You got a little bit of a gap, then your weld can penetrate each metal, if that makes sense. If you got a little bit of a gap, you can burn that corner of this side, you can burn that, and it'll lay down onto your rear end, and you can melt it into your rear end. See how I burnt that on there? If I leave a little bit of a gap, there's place for the weld to lay in. If I don't leave any gap, then it seems to puddle on top, and you're not burning in. That's a 1/4 inch or better. So it's really hard to penetrate that. It's really hard to penetrate that unless you have a really, you'd have to TIG weld it, I guess, to penetrate it the best. But when I'm using a MIG welder, I've used nothing but. But I always leave a little bit of a gap, and I always 45 it. When I got this frame rail on here, I welded the bottom on. It's like I'm getting ahead of myself as I explain things. What happened is where's my hat, man? My hat. What happens is, we'll turn that welder off. There we go. What happens is, when I found this body, or the front end, the cowl piece, it was a tractor, and here, this was where it was cut off. Had a piece ripped out of the frame, and now we're putting a piece in it, and we're going to put another piece in it. What am I going to say here? I got another piece to put in there. This frame is 3/16, so I had to double up some of the metal. Anytime I'm welding on this, I'm 45ing it so I can penetrate both sides. When you're welding in components like that, you should 45 them. The rear end is out of a 50 Ford truck. The spring is out of a 36 Ford. And the wishbones are out of the car, and all I did is split them and put heim joints on them. I'm looking for the rear end not to turn up, I guess. I'm just making everything my way. You have to be really careful when you're welding that stuff. And I was talking about Colton today. Colton was here and he was asking about that stuff. And I even went so far as I even put a piece of weld or puddle weld on the inside of the frame rail just to make sure that it penetrates. When you weld something and you're laying it on top, it's welded on top. But when you grind it off, when you grind it to make it look nice, it's not there anymore. So if I have a piece of metal and I weld it, have a piece of metal weld like that, and then I put a weld on the outside of it and then grind it off, you haven't got much. So you have to make sure that you remember that when you're welding that stuff. That's what I'm telling you. You have to be careful doing that sort of stuff. I'm not saying anything wrong with anybody doing it. You should pay attention when you are doing it. Got the body off. The body picked off really easy. It was very light. Jolene said on Instagram, someone noticed I got a Speedway box. Yes, I do. And I checked on the thing. In 1960 is when Corvair had this steering box. So I'm into 1960. So if anybody was investigating this car, Hot Rodder was investigating this car, he would know that was 1960, and that would not make it in the 50s. I had the original one. I could have used it, obviously. Could have put it up on the frame and then welded it on there. But I was thinking about safety when I was thinking about the steering. I'd rather have a new steering box, and it also fits. I have no problem. All I have to do is stretch this arm right here to there, and that's it. And then we'll have steering. So other than that, you see what she looks like with the body on her. So this is what I made. This part here. Made that part and that part, put the spring in it, put the rear end in it. I'm going to have to cut this out or cut something out of that. I like that there. It's good and heavy. It was in there for a while. Someone put it in there. So I don't know if I want to take it out or just cut a loop out of it and run a drive shaft through it. Make it a drive shaft hole. This frame, as you can tell, I don't know if anyone can tell, had this piece on the bottom. Looks like a 32 Ford. It is a 32 Ford frame, but it never had that lip on it. I took a piece of round rod a long time ago and welded on the lip of it, and I had to finish it back here. I finished it up the wheel well. And you can see how I finished it off. I just welded it all up, took a coat hanger, put a bunch of weld in there, then I welded it up good, and then I ground it off flush. You couldn't tell. So that's put in there as a piece of 5/8 round rod, and I just ground it off and make it look nice. As simple as that. Yeah, so we're getting close, I guess. There's a lot of little framework that I have to clean up and make look nice. Haven't got my pedals geared up yet, but I need a master cylinder to gear that up, so I'm going to have to find a master cylinder. And you have to tell the difference between a standard master cylinder and a power booster master cylinder. The top cover will have both, if it has the front and the back, both holes will be the same. If it's for disc brakes, so one will be big and one will be small. So I'm not going to use power brakes on this. I'm going to use standard brakes. I'm going to have to look for a master cylinder that has a small pot on the top. If you know what I mean. It has a little cover on the top. If there are two small ones, that means it's a standard booster. If it's got one big one and one small one, that means it's a power booster. So that's where I'm at. Nothing else to tell you other than that today. Other than that, the show was on again. It's aired in Canada. Remember, tell everybody, make them support. Support, support, support. That's all I can say. Any questions, maybe? Anybody have any questions?
Not yet.
No questions? Well, that's just fine by me. I don't have to answer anything. Okay. All right, have a good Friday. We're having a good Friday. I'm just working on the chassis. Making myself happy, I guess. Just remember, when you go out and buy your hot rod or you go out and buy your little project, don't overspend. Because when you buy that project, you're going to spend your money on it. So you know what I mean? Make sure make sure that person knows that you're going to spend money on it when you buy it. You start buying stuff like this, you have to buy it cheap. If you don't buy it cheap, well then, you just kind of, I don't know what to say. Yeah, it's a big thing. When you take on a project like this, it's big. I've just done it so many times, it just seems natural. To me, it seems natural to always be making something. I've got this rear end almost complete. I need shocks. I'm going to run a shock. I got a little shock bracket. I got a shock shackle here. And I'm going to run a shock to here. I have to make two little brackets and run my shock. That's going to run my shock there. I told you how I was going to run the shock in the front. Then we put brakes on it, steering on it. The roof has been sent to get covered. Can't wait to see what that looks like. So remember, when you're welding your suspension parts, try to make sure that you always 45 each side, or or bevel it off so you get a good penetration. That's all you have to remember when you're doing suspension stuff. It's not like that on bodywork, because you're trying, sometimes you're butt welding and that sort of stuff. That's fine. It's sheet metal. But when you're doing this sort of stuff, take the little effort and make sure that it sticks. If it don't look good the first time, weld it again. Have a good Friday.